All right, so I've been hearing this from a lot of people around me for a very long time. Not a couple months, not 6 months, but years I've heard of how difficult it is to find an entry level job. So I went on YouTube and I started looking at these TikTok compilations of people who are just simply not finding work. And a lot of the concerns that I see in these videos are the exact same ones. Is that employers are looking for people who are going to do the job of five people for as little money as humanly possible. And there are certain correlations that I see that you're out there and you're looking around and you just kind of see the same crap jobs over and over again. I just got back from Kroger's and I was talking to one of the cashiers that lives in my apartment complex. She just actually lives right across the parking lot from me. And she broke up with her boyfriend last month, and he wants her out of his apartment on December 1st. And I asked her, what are you going to do? Because if you're working here, you can't afford your own apartment. And so she said, Millennial Steam, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I remember that this happened to someone else that worked in that same store. And she ended up moving out onto the street because, again, she lived in this apartment complex with a guy. They broke up, and then suddenly she's on the street. She's actually sleeping behind the liquor store when she got picked up by the cops because you're not allowed to be anywhere once you're homeless. So I know a lot of people who are struggling and a lot of women who are in situations that they need someone else to help them financially. And guess what? They don't want to help him out in any way. They just feel like they're entitled to getting financial assistance just because they're women. And as I looked at her, she didn't seem worried. Like if I was a cashier and I knew I had nowhere to go, she doesn't even have anything to sleep on. The only thing she owns in that apartment is a beanbag chair. And I was just like, and she just looked at me and she smiled. And I was just like, oh my God, you're going to become like that lady that won't leave the apartment complex that's pushing the shopping carts around from corner to corner. But the great thing about all of these women that I've met that can't find jobs is that they still have family. And as long as you have a lifeline out there, you can return home. I've never met any parent that wanted their child to be homeless. And I I hope that's the case for a lot of these women because they're going in that direction very quickly. And I just talked to someone a few minutes ago over text message, and she asked me, like, do you know where I should apply? And I didn't know what to do. I looked at my phone and then I thought to myself, she's really serious. The last money she made from working a gig job was $230 in 1 week. And I'm like, you can't support yourself on 200, 300. You can't really support yourself on $1,000 a week. It's very, very bad out there. And I don't know if there's a solution to this, or as I like to say in all of my videos, if there's just simply going to be an adjustment period for the proletariat, that we're going to have to get used to long term unemployment while the government tells us that unemployment is at 4%. There's no way there are this many people out there looking for jobs with a 4% unemployment rate. It doesn't make any sense to me. But this is the system that we currently have, and it's failing millions of people in real time. I mean, if you're willing to go onto TikTok in front of the entire world and put your face out there and say you can't find a job, you know things are really, really bad. And I know that some of these people make a lot of money doing these types of things, but still, having your friends, your family, potential future coworkers knowing that for the rest of eternity, you're going to have that video on TikTok where you came out and you said you've tried everything and nothing's working. And what's the natural reaction to these videos by the internet? Is to blame you. I've had two or three people now tell me that you need to go and take your paper resume to these companies and show them that you deserve a job. I assure you, the paper resume has been gone for a very long time. I don't even understand why we still have paper in the workplace for any reason. But it's still out there, just like the newspaper, and people will continue to think that somehow showing your face to someone and giving them a paper resume is going to take you places. As a person who worked at Walmart for so many years and saw people come in desperate for work, just like I was when I applied there. You come in, and the first thing the manager will tell you, any Walmart will tell you, we only take online applications. The last time I saw a paper application was about 6 weeks ago, and it was at a smoothie shop. And I just looked at the paper application. I thought to myself, there's one person working in this entire restaurant. And I thought, you know what? They probably go through people probably every week, because a job like that's going to pay minimum wage. It's going to be thankless. The customers are going to be rude. And learning to do any job takes some amount of effort. If you don't want to put forth the effort to learn how to do a minimum wage job, because the job isn't worth it, then you're going to be in a constant cycle of recycling employees. My current corporation, it recycles people like crazy. I mean, I've seen them hire the same person for sales like 5 times since I've been there. And of course, they just use the job as a stopgap between finding a better paying job at a better company. And so you kind of just look at the management, and it's like, the reason why no one will become invested in these bottom level jobs is because they're just not worth it. Or you have to have two or three of them. And if you work in retail and you have a schedule that's not consistent, that's the great thing about bottom tier jobs. There's just no consistency. One week you can walk in, you'll have 19 hours. But if it's seasonal. Seasonal time in retail is usually you get 40 hours. But it's the only time of the year. Around Thanksgiving and around Christmas are the only times of the year where they'll bring you up to 40 hours. The rest of the time you're going to be hovering between 19 and 29 hours. At least that's how I spent all of my time working in retail. Kroger's was the worst at less than 20 hours every week so that they wouldn't have to pay health benefits. All right, so I spent a lot of time on the introduction. I have my three talking points: the paradox of being overqualified, the trap of low paying jobs, and systemic issues in the hiring practices. And this is one that got brought up at my work last week by someone. So, the first talking point I have is employers claim to want skilled, educated workers, yet they reject candidates for being too qualified or demand extensive experience for entry level roles. As I am currently searching for a job, I do not put any education on my resume. I put on all of my skills, all of my technology skills, and what I currently do at my current job for as long as I have it. But there's no education. There's no need to scare off a potential employer with fancy education. They're not looking for your education because everyone has education. I mean, you can talk to a person in a job interview and determine their level of education. I mean, I've had it turned against me so many times where I've been told in an interview that I had the wrong education. So at some point, I had to make that decision that, you know what? They don't want my education. They want to know what you can do, what you can hit the ground doing. Education is highly overrated in our society because it used to mean something. Education, just having that college degree, used to be enough to get you in the door into a white collar job 20 years ago. That has that has gone completely down the toilet because you can have a 4-year degree in whatever you want: engineering, science, technology, mathematics. it doesn't matter when the job isn't any of those things. If you're like me, you've spent your whole life working in different things, right? Warehouse, retail, restaurant, things that don't give you experience to put on a resume. So when you apply to a job, you don't put those other jobs on there. Like my resume is very skimpy when it comes to skills because I've acquired most of my skills through on the job training in technology. But during the times where I haven't had a good job, that is just uh, fluff. It's not even fluff. It can't even be mentioned. The years where you work, let's say at a gas station, right? It's like, well, we see that there's nothing in this gap here. It's like I don't have anything relevant. You don't need to know that I was stocking shelves or that I was mopping the floor or cleaning public bathrooms. That doesn't make any sense. But they will use it against you. Having large gaps in your resume where you had crap minimum wage jobs can and will be used against you in an interview because they're looking for the perfect candidate. It's like what I've heard today about women who are looking for the perfect Mr. Right and they're getting older and older and they're frustrated because they've spent their 20s, their 30s, and now they're getting up into their 40s and they never met the perfect 6 foot guy with blue eyes and blonde hair that's got chiseled abs, and now they're angry because they've wasted all of this time looking. Corporations are the same way with potential candidates. They don't want to waste their time on someone who's not Mr. Right and is available for the bottom level wages. They want perfection in their candidates that they're not finding. And I know this because I see this. I am very close to the hiring in my current job, and I see what they're looking for. They want people that are top in their field, but are also simultaneously willing to take nothing to work there. And then they wonder why their retention rates are so low. I mean, absolutely just abysmal retention. I mean, you're talking about at least 5 people leaving the company every single day. And that leaves hundreds of positions open. I think there's probably about 500 positions currently open at my Evil Corp because they decided to get rid of people that weren't performing well. And you're just like, okay, I mean, how can I be one of these people that's not performing well when I run my entire area by myself? And even though I have an employee, on Friday, I found out from one of my other coworkers that Gen Z's been skipping on his work. And it's going to have to be addressed because you can't have an employee that doesn't follow directions. So you have to deal with the impossible. It almost feels like in the workforce, there is no perfect candidate, but Evil Corp is not going to take you if you don't meet their metric for what they're looking for. And the number one thing that they're looking for is a person who's willing to work for less, has the right experience, and isn't going to stand up for themselves. Talking point number two: overqualified workers in these roles often face burnout and financial instability, perpetual cycles of poverty despite their credentials. That describes me in a nutshell. I have been in perpetual cycles of poverty my entire adult life, going from one crappy minimum wage job to another. I've told you guys this. After college, it was retail. After retail, it was a call center. After the call center, it was unemployed for years. That's a tough job market. And um, gosh, that was when your text message rings in your ear while you're talking, it kind of throws your whole train of thought off. So many available jobs offer wages that don't match the cost of living, forcing people to work multiple jobs or take jobs beneath their qualifications. And that's kind of been the story of my life, is having to take jobs beneath my qualifications because these employers, I mean, they're going through and looking at who's applying to these jobs, and you're just kind of looking at at what they offer. I mean, I've walked into a job interview before and they wouldn't talk about money. Like, I went through an entire hour of an interview and they said, well, we're going to make you an offer based on this interview. And I got the offer and it was $1 more than minimum wage. And I asked afterwards, I wrote back HR and I'm like, you want all of this for $14.50? And they're like, well, you know what? We've had people in this job for years and no one else has complained about the low pay. So if you're going to complain about the low pay, then maybe you shouldn't work here. And that's what I've heard. That's what they get away with saying this to your face in a conversation over the phone when you call to ask what's wrong with you? Who's going to take a $14.50 job other than a teenager in high school? And they just kind of look at you and say stupid things like, "Oh, we're looking for someone who's not who doesn't need money. Who money isn't their main motivator to take this job here." Or that horrible question in the job interview: "Why do you want to work here?" And the most honest answer is, "I need money for food and rent." That's really what it comes down to: is I just need money for food and rent. I mean, it's not like your job is this glorious career opportunity is going to rocket ship my path to the top of my career. I've given up on that part of life. There are no career oriented jobs down here where I apply because those jobs have either been outsourced to other countries or they've been torn up into much smaller, cheaper jobs. And I've told you guys the story about my friend Courtney, who works as a physical therapist. So when I see her at the physical therapy place, which I have to go to on Wednesday, like when she told me that her husband lost her job, I was mortified. Like, to think, I mean, because she makes a part-time income as a physical therapist. Her job was never designed to support a family of with 5 kids. And when she tells me that, she's very optimistic. She's very hopeful. She's a person that's grown up in poverty, in lifelong poverty, so she knows what it's like to be poor. But at the same time, she's afraid. And like myself, I'm afraid right now. When I go to sleep at night, I think of all the terrible things that could happen to me if I don't end up getting a job where I make at least as much money as I currently do. Because everything is going to hell. You've got credit cards, you've got student loans, you've got rent, you've got food going up, you've got transportation costs. You have all of these things that depend on you having a job that's somewhat good. I don't know who can have all of those things and live independently without having a job that pays more than, I don't know, $30 an hour. And as a person that's lived on it and off the minimum wage, mainly on the minimum wage, it's a struggle. There's a reason why I never owned a car before. There's a reason why I've never lived by myself before. There's a reason why there's never anything they eat in the fridge. It's just poverty. And when you're cycling in and out of it, how are you supposed to save up or do anything to help yourself when you're always one step away from losing everything? And that's really what's happened to me throughout my entire life. Is like, you build up enough, like you have a couple of nice things, you hit that patch of poverty, and now you have to sell everything that you built up for practically nothing because there's always someone waiting. That's why pawn shops exist in America. They're always waiting for you to screw up so that the pawn shop can take everything you need: your wedding ring, your chains, your electronics, your whatever that you can sell to the pawn shop for 10 to 15% of what you paid for it. And they're more than happy to take your money because they're just going to make 100% profit on it. And there's nothing you can do because that's why those industries exist. There are entire industries in America that prey on poor people, like payday loans and the cycle of high interest credit cards. It's like we can't get out of the way because we need help financially, and we're looking for whatever handhold we can get in order to save ourselves from being truly uh, in a bad spot. And this, my last talking point is something that Gen Zero mentioned last week, and because he's been looking for another job ever since he started working for me. Because, as he said to me on many occasions, I know what this company's like, and I was like, oh, good lord. He has made it clear that he's not happy working there, and he's been struggling. I mean, really struggling to find another job. And he said this to me: automated systems filter out candidates, making it nearly impossible for many applicants to get their resume seen by a real person. And that's the problem. Is they're using AI technology, and they've been doing this for years. When I applied for jobs at the university, I literally had to take the job description and paste it into my resume so that I was guaranteed to get an interview. And even after I pasted the job description right into my resume, I still got beat out by higher quality candidates. And by that, I mean people who actually had degrees in technology still beat me out in the job interview. And so I've never managed to hold a a good job at the university. I always worked in the bottom tier jobs at the university. And that meant no health benefits, no paid time off of any kind, no paid holidays, no sick leave, no vacation, nothing but hourly crap jobs for half my life. And you just kind of like you get to a point when you finally leave and you're like, geez, this is awful. This experience with the university is one of the worst times of my entire life. And just like with anything else, you want to look back with your rose tinted lenses and think, you know what, it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. I didn't have access to health care, so every time I got sick, you went into the hole for $1,000 because you had to see a doctor with no insurance, and that can be incredibly expensive. Out of pocket medical bills ruin poor people. Anyhow, I think I've gone on rant enough here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.